just a reminder, we were done with Feeling Thursday. Just wanted to remind you guys. Okay, so 8f is the equation of a straight line.
Oh, that is so short.
It is very short. We only have like one example, so you guys can try it out. The assignment, I believe, is also quite short. So this is got some stuff you already know. Like if I say the equation of a line, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Yeah, y equals mx plus b. We are going to use that. So you guys already know y equals mx plus b. So that part should be really familiar. The part that's new, that you probably have not ever done before, is how we will find our slope. We're actually going to use the unit circle to do. So that part of it, I don't think that's something you do in trig or anything. So that part will be brand new, but it's not really crazy. So go ahead and draw your stat box. Oh, I didn't know that zoomed. Sorry. Here we go. Draw your stat box. Yeah. Slope. So here's the deal. A straight line is going to make an angle with the positive x-axis. So if it does cross that x-axis, which it will eventually, right? No matter where we have that line, at some point that line is going to cross the x-axis. We can find the slope by actually finding the tangent. Now, I think we've talked about this, have we? That gradient is another word for slope. So that's just in the international version, because this is an IB class and we use an IB textbook, they use gradient instead of slope. But we know that slope is the change in the y's over the change in the x's. We know slope is rise over run. Well, the change in the y's and the change in our x's can be related to sine over cosine. So our slope is actually the tangent of the angle. And so it is in your packet, but just a reminder that it's like sine over cosine, which is our tangent. So I know that this says the positive x-axis. So we want to try to look to see what kind of angle is being formed when it crosses this part of the x-axis. So if it crosses back here, we can still use what we know and figure it out. We just have to keep in mind that you're going to have some negatives and stuff like that. So we have to be just a little bit careful with it. Any questions so far? So that's kind of like the new thing is, oh my goodness, the slope is the same as the tangent of that angle. When we talk about y equals mx plus b, we all remember that m is the slope. What does b, what's b? That y-intercept. So we can look at our graph too, and like this one we don't have a number there, but we can look and see like what that number is and figure out what our y-intercept is. So this note is that we always want to look for what the angle is in terms of the x-axis. So if you are given the angle as a relation to the y-axis, you'll have to just do a little bit more thinking kind of to figure out, okay, what would be the angle be if it's going towards the x-axis or like to the horizontal part. So it's still doable if they give you it in relation to the y-axis, but you got to think a little bit more to think about what would it be in comparison to the x-axis. Alright, as I've said, we're still using y equals mx plus b. M is that slope, b is that y-intercept. If you need to write a note down to remind yourself that, go ahead. How do you guys remember that b is the y-intercept? Like, how did you commit that to memory? Just did it? So, okay. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Okay, so here is our example. So I'll give you guys a moment to go ahead and sketch that. So we're going to write the equation of this line. And I'm just going to say that. That's what we're going to do. We're going to write the equation of this line. So we can see that it's going through the origin. We do have an angle in relation to the x-axis, so that's nice. So this is what I was talking about. So the angle is between the x-axis and the line. So if you were given this part, then you'd have to do a little bit of thinking to figure out what that part was from the horizontal. We're going to write the equation of the line. Now I think that B might be one of the easier parts of this because we can just look to see where is it crossing the y-axis. At 0, right? So I know we don't need that 0, but I'm just going to leave it in there for a second here. To find our slope, we need to find the tangent. So my slope is going to be the tangent. And again, we talked about that's sine over cosine. Now, if we look at our unit circle, over here, we don't have pi over 6. What kind of angles do we have over here? We have like the 5 pi over 6, right? So we can use that to find our sine over cosine. So we've got 1/2 over negative root 3 over 2. I got it from my unit circle. So then we can multiply by the reciprocal. So I have 1/2 times negative 2 over root 3. So I end up with negative 1 over root 3. And you can leave it that way. You don't have to rationalize it, so we can leave it. I also want to take a minute to kind of recognize that this is a downhill line, and we know our downhill lines should have a negative slope. So if you forget to kind of think about this quadrant and you just look at pi over 6 over here or something, take a second to like think it through. Does my answer make sense? I should have a negative slope here. So I've got negative 1 over root 3 for my slope. And then, of course, we don't really need that plus 0, so I've got y equals negative 1 over root 3x for the equation of my line. So we found tangent before. We've used y equals mx plus b before, so we're just putting those two things together. Are there any questions? Okay. Now, do keep in mind you might have some problems where it's moved down, so you might have a y-intercept that's not 0. You might have some problems where your angle is in relation to the y-axis, so you have to do a little bit of thinking to figure out what that angle actually is. Make sure that you check those answers in the back. And in your stat box, what did you learn about slope today? It equals tangent? Is that what you guys said? Because I couldn't quite make it out. Oh, sine over cosine, yeah? Okay, so super short assignment. You should definitely, like I said, check your answers just in case you're making like some small mistakes with those angles. And this is 8F